Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah and this is a date with Miss Hannah. Let me hope everyone is fine. So we are going to start off with question 3. This is still a Ugandan Economy revision for our final exams. Question 3, part A says, explain why economists take GDP seriously despite its known limitations. So here I only need to highlight the advantage of GDP. So it's allocated 3 marks and the answer is because GDP. Obviously, you're not going to start your answers with because in your exam. So you can say economists take GDP seriously despite its known limitations because GDP is highly correlated with things people care about. So GDP is highly correlated with the standard of living, wages, prices, value of currency, and so many others. Or generally, you can just say GDP is correlated with happiness. So every time people say we have a high GDP, they relate it with growth in terms of standards of living, in terms of the wages. That means more people are employed, the prices are stable, the currency is stable. So GDP is associated with happiness. It is correlated with happiness. For example, we have GDP per capita. This is GDP per individual. So every time somebody says my GDP increased, that means they're actually happy because their standards of living increase. So the reason economists take GDP seriously is because it is correlated, it is connected, or it works hand in hand with things people care about, like the standards of living, wages, jobs, prices, and the value of currency. Part B says, discuss the main determinants of GDP growth that Uganda should satisfy to achieve its vision. The main determinants of GDP growth that Uganda should satisfy to achieve its vision. Number 1, we have capital accumulation. Capital accumulation, that is the saving and investment rate. It should at least cover 15% of the GDP. We have population and labor force growth, a factor still under debate. So we need at least to make sure that the labor force is huge. If very low people are working, that means people don't have jobs, which leads to a low GDP. And we said if GDP is associated with happiness, that means people are not happy. So we need a high labor force to ensure that people are happy, to ensure a high GDP. And then we have technological process. So these are actually determinants of GDP, but they are saying determinants of GDP growth that Uganda should satisfy to achieve its vision. So you just list down the determinants of GDP in line with Uganda's vision. Then we have technological progress, that is the R&D or research and development versus imitation. So it would be better if more people innovated new things, created new things rather than just imitating the old stuff. Then we have role of natural resources, also under debate. Role of organization, entrepreneurship and macroeconomic management. Role of institutions, property rights, rule of law, impact of taxes, investment in education, and so many others. Then Part C says one of the challenges Uganda is facing in her pursuit of the Vision 2040 is the fact that although GDP has been growing, households among Ugandans are not growing at the pace needed to achieve the vision. Discuss the factors that could be contributing to this paradox. Why the pace is not actually developing, why the household incomes among Ugandans are not growing at the pace needed to achieve the Vision 2040. So we need those factors. Number 1, growth is not inclusive. Rising inequality, growth is not inclusive, thus rising inequality among the Ugandans. High population growth rate, that is the population is competing with GDP growth. So GDP is still struggling to grow. It is growing at a slow pace, but the rate at which the population, the rate at which people are producing is high. So the population keeps increasing, and it is competing with the GDP and winning the rest. A large proportion of Uganda's GDP is produced by foreigners who repatriate the profits. So the population is actually not even just coming from the mortality rates, but also from foreigners who keep coming to Uganda. Very many foreigners are settling in Uganda now, and all these foreigners are just repatriating the profits, taking them back to their countries. Thus, yes, you realize more is being produced, right? but the profits are being taken to the other countries, so the GDP will not grow in such a situation. Then we have high marginal propensity to import. High marginal propensity to import. That means they are importing more than we are exporting. And every time you import, you're the one losing, because that means you need to pay the other people. So you're losing your revenue, you're sending profits to another country. Yet with exports, it is the country benefiting more. So there's a high marginal propensity to import, around 33%. Is covering 33% of the GDP. Then we have low levels of capital accumulation. Low levels of capital accumulation, that is culture of consumerism. People are consuming more. And then we have failure to industrialize to create productive jobs. So failure to industrialize to create productive jobs. Then question 4, part A says briefly explain the structure of Uganda's economy. And this is just 5 marks. Briefly explain the structure of Uganda's economy. So Uganda's economy is diversified across 3 sectors, that is agriculture, industry, and services. So literally, this is what you need to know, that Uganda's economy is diversified across 3 sectors: agriculture, industry, and services. Then you need to show how much is in agriculture, how much is in industry, how much is in services, and how do they influence each other. So part 1, we are saying agriculture has 6 subsectors, that is the cash crops, food crops, livestock, forestry, fishing, and agriculture support services. Agriculture has 6 subsectors: cash crops, food crops, fishing, livestock, forestry, and agricultural support services. And agriculture contributes 22% of the GDP. Agriculture contributes 22% of the GDP. I think this dropped. It was previously, I think, 54%, and it dropped to 22% of GDP. Then we have industry, has 5 subsectors, that is mining and quarrying, manufacturing, electricity, water, and construction, and this contributes 20% of GDP. You need to know these subsectors, because in case you find objectives in your final paper, they might actually ask which of the following falls under industry, which of the following falls under agriculture. So you need to know these various subsectors, and they can also add new marks in your finals if you mention them, like just right here. So you know that industry has 5 subsectors, that is mining and quarrying, manufacturing, electricity, water, and construction, which contributes 20% of GDP. Then we have services. Services is the largest sector with 14 subsectors. It also has the largest contributor. It is also the largest contributor to GDP. That means it contributes, it contributes 53%. So the service sector is the largest, followed by the agriculture sector, and then the industry sector is still low. Just like we have seen here, failure to industrialize is what is actually making household incomes still grow at a low pace. So there is failure to industrialize. That means industry is carrying a small percentage of our GDP. It has just 5 subsectors: mining and quarrying, manufacturing, electricity, water, and construction. Then we have services with the largest, having 14 subsectors, agriculture following with 6 subsectors. Then part B of the question says there has been partial structural transformation of Uganda's economy from agriculture to modern sectors. Explain any 5 causes of this trend. So causes of the transformation from agriculture to modern sectors. This is given 10 marks. You can just list 5, because I think give any 5 causes and explain them to earn the 10 marks. So we have point 1 as low income elasticity of demand, known as YED. Y is income, then E is elasticity, D is demand. So low income elasticity of demand for agricultural products versus the high income elasticity of demand for manufacturers. That means the demand for agriculture was actually low, or it is inelastic compared to the demand for manufactured products, leading to people leading to the trend shifting from agricultural products to manufactured products. People were demanding more manufactured products than the agricultural products, so the agricultural sector started deteriorating. Then we have deliberate government policy to turn the terms of trade against agriculture. Government policies right now are being against agriculture, so there are deliberate government policy to turn the terms of trade against agriculture. Then we have climate changes climate change affects agriculture more. With the various changes in agriculture, we are going to realize that the agriculture sector realizes more losses than the gains. They are going to lose. And also, agricultural products are seasonal due to the climatic changes. So, somebody's not going to wait for something that is going to happen in the next 2 months, that is going to appear in the next 3 months. Here, there is something that can be manufactured. So, climatic change affects agriculture more. Then we have demographic changes. Demographic changes, the younger population equals to more demand for services. So every time generations change, every time there's change in generations, there's going to be a change in demand. People keep demanding various things. So there's more demand for services and agricultural produce, for example, education, health, entertainment, and so on. Then we have increased accumulation of human capital that takes people off land. Asymmetric changes in preferences, that is Angel's law. So that is all for today, and we shall continue with the next question in my next video. Don't forget to subscribe.